everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kayla and it's time to crack into a good book. So today's video is going to be another recent reads wrap up. And this is covering the books 21 through 30 that I read in July. So we've got a pretty good match here. So like always, we'll start at the lowest rated and work our way up. So the first book that I will talk about here is a 3-star rating, and that's Naked in Death by J.D. Robb. So this is the first book in this In Death series. And this is basically one thing that I actually forgot about. This takes place in 2058, I think, so it's like a futuristic romantic suspense where we follow Eve, who is a New York police lieutenant, and she's hunting for a killer. So basically, a senator's daughter was killed and she was a prostitute, so this kind of leads into politics. We've got and just general high society, I guess. We have this complication of Rourke, who is this influential dude, and he's very handsome. But it turns out that he's the lead suspect. So, there's obviously this mystery going on and lots of actual politics. So there's definitely some romance and steamy parts in it. Not surprising, J.D. Robb is a pseudonym for Nora Roberts, so am I surprised? No. I did like Eve, this main character, a lot. She certainly has this darker past, but she's really badass and super good at her job, which I really appreciate. Rourke is definitely one of these alpha male personalities, but I don't know, as far as alpha male personalities go in books, he was kind of sweet about it, I guess, so it didn't really bother me as much here. Like I had mentioned, I think I was a little bit surprised about this futuristic aspect. I had completely forgotten about it, but we do have some technology here, and there's a variety of laws that have been passed, gun control, so we get some commentary on that. Prostitution is legal. We have, just a variety of laws like that. The murders are certainly of a sexual nature, and I didn't predict where this was going. So, I think there are some content warnings here for rape, murder, sexual abuse, incest. I think overall it was fairly well paced, but I just didn't fully get into it for some reason. So I'm kind of torn. This is a gigantic series. I think it's somewhere in the 50 book range. So I'm kind of interested in continuing on, but it's not, I think, the highest priority for me. So now we move to the 3.5 star range, and the first book I'll talk about here is A Song of Race and Ruin by Roseanne A. Brown. So this is the first, and I think, a duology. This is a YA fantasy inspired by West Africa. So we follow Malik and his sisters who are trying to get into the city to essentially escape their war-stricken home. But a spirit abducts Malik's younger sister, so he makes a deal with the spirit to get her back by killing the princess. And then our other main character is this princess, Karina, and she is trying to resurrect her murdered mother and needs the heart of a king to do so. So she essentially offers her hand in marriage as a prize for winning this competition during this festival time. So I really liked the setting. I thought that was cool. I think there were some aspects that were inspired by Egypt and the pharaohs, and these people were the conquerors. In terms of the characters, Karina certainly feels like she's lost. She suffers from migraines, and there were some interesting developments there. I did guess the reason, or I did guess what was going on behind all of this, I suppose. She was a little bit whiny to me at first, but I did like her character arc. I liked her by the end. Malik was definitely my favorite character, and I liked him throughout the book, even, certainly from the start. I liked how devoted he is to his family. I liked his abilities. He seems to be a genuinely nice guy, and there's some certainly really interesting developments with him. He also has anxiety, so we get to see him kind of deal with this and manage it throughout the book. The plot, there's lots of betrayals, backstabbing, that's always fun. However, for some reason, I was just not really into the middle section of the book, and I'm not really entirely sure why, but the ending was fantastic, and that really sealed the deal for me. There's a competition aspect, obviously, with this, people competing to get married to the princess, so I liked that a lot, and there's, some storytelling bits that go along with that, and I thought those were really awesome. We have some interesting spirits and gods going on here. There's a particular scene that happens in a necropolis that I thought was really cool. Overall, like I mentioned, I did struggle a bit through the middle, but the ending was absolutely fantastic, and I definitely do want to know what happens next. The other 3.5 star book I'll talk about is The Boyfriend Project by Farrah Rochon. So this is a romance, and we follow our main character who essentially finds out through tweets of this awful date that the guy that she's been seeing has also been seeing 2 other women. So this goes viral because she ends up going to this restaurant and confronting him. And these ladies essentially end up becoming friends and make this pact to spend the next 6 months focusing on themselves and, pursuing their dreams without guys. So our main character is finally developing this app that she's been wanting to do for a while, and she meets this guy at work who seems too good to be true. So this was definitely enjoyable, and I did have fun with this plot. I liked the premise, I think that's pretty hilarious, but I also like how, the women become friends and want to focus on doing things for themselves. We do get more developments with Daniel, this love interest that were actually really liked a lot. The main character was pretty great. I loved that she's a woman in a STEM field, and it's particularly awesome to see a Black woman in the STEM fields. I liked how she's just really awesome at her job and also likes to go outside and hike. So I found this super relatable because, obviously I'm in a STEM field, I'm in biostatistics, but I also like to spend time outside. So it's nice to see kind of a well-rounded character who has a variety of interests similar to my own. There's obviously a very nice discussion here about how challenging it is to succeed as a Black woman in STEM fields and just in general. The main character, I think, is very strong and patient. She puts up with a lot of work shit that I would just find absolutely obnoxious. And then our love interest, Daniel, is biracial. He's Black and Korean. So he seems like a nice guy. I liked his job and how he struggles with the choices that need to be made. He is very sweet and supportive, and I definitely liked the romance here. So I think my only minor complaint would be just sometimes the wording was overly descriptive, and that kind of prevented me from fully getting into the story. But, that being said, I still had a really good time with it. So now we move to the 4-star category, and the first book I'll talk about here is Your Move by Michelle Young. So I did receive this for review from the author. So this is an adult thriller where our main character, Claire, kind of keeps everybody at a distance. She comes home one day from work and knows that somebody has been in her apartment and that her secret has been discovered. So she finds herself in the middle of a murder investigation and runs away into danger and kind of must survive. So this was really good. It was very fast-paced. I finished it in one sitting. It just kept me engaged throughout. The main character, Claire, I don't think is particularly likable, but I do feel very sympathetic towards her. She's definitely had this really hard life, and I thought it was kind of admirable how strong she is, and she's definitely a survivor. Now, I did predict some of the reveals in this story, but that's okay. I really liked seeing how everything unfolded. We do get some flashbacks to her past, which I thought were really interesting to just figure out her background and her secrets and everything. I was definitely worried for her in the present timeline, so I think everything worked really well together with these dual timelines. Some things were maybe a little bit too convenient, but I did enjoy them. There are some trigger warnings here for rape, abuse, and miscarriage, but I do definitely recommend this book, and I will definitely be checking out more from this author. The next 4-star book I'll talk about is The Loop by Ben Oliver. So this is a YA sci-fi that takes place in the future, and we have this loop, which is a prison where teenagers essentially can opt into these delays, which are kind of medical testing for the rich people. And they do this in order to delay their execution. So there are some rumors of war, the government-issued rain stops happening, and prisoners are acting strange. So the warden of this prison tells our main character to get out, and so he has to decide if breaking out is really the way to go and needs to figure out what's going on here. So this was actually really good. This was very fast-paced and interesting, and I definitely wanted to know what was going on here. I didn't expect the direction it went, so that was a pleasant surprise. We have kind of an interesting disease element, and these smilers that we see are certainly pretty creepy. I do think this is maybe more plot driven than character driven, but I do enjoy those sometimes, and I think this worked really well for me. That being said, we still learn about the characters and their background, especially the main character. We do learn about his background and why he's actually in this prison. He seems like a good guy overall. He really enjoys reading, so of course I found that relatable. Some of the other side characters, I maybe didn't have the best sense of them, but I did enjoy them overall. So, I think one of the big strong points is the setting. It's super creepy, and it sounds just absolutely awful, especially with all these, delays, and Oh, goodness. The futuristic tech that we get here was definitely cool. Some of it's obviously alarming. But yeah, I don't want to say too much more since it's kind of fun to uncover things for yourself, but I definitely enjoyed this and would recommend it. The last 4-star book I'll talk about is Hula Girl by Laura Ward Cossio. So this is another romance where we follow a lawyer, Ava, who is forced to take a vacation in Maui, and she meets Ford, who's this surfer guy, and they're like instantly attracted to one another. But, you know, Ava's only there on vacation, so they go back to their real world lives and actually reunite in the real world. So they end up, through circumstances, having to do like a fake engagement, and of course they start to wonder if they're actually pretending. So this was really fun. I liked that it takes place at least partially in Maui. I, found that setting awesome. It takes place more on the like northern part, I think, of Maui, which is not usually where I tend to go, but like I'm still somewhat familiar with it, so I definitely liked that. Certainly, I could have used more beach time, but I did like what we had. The plot was ultimately really entertaining and very cute. This does cover some deeper topics, I think, like the struggle that female lawyers may have in the workplace, being taken seriously. There's parental death and some like bad parent-child relationships and dementia, so definitely some like heavier topics, but I thought that they were handled very well. I really liked both Ava and Ford. I definitely respect Ava for working her butt off to succeed at her job, but she does have like this really awful work-life balance at the start, certainly. And then, Ford, I respect his ability to walk away from this life that he didn't really want in order to pursue his dreams. I liked he has like this discussion about like the Hawaiian lifestyle and just how important it is to be in nature to kind of like restore balance to your life, and just I feel like a big discussion throughout this book was just like the importance of work-life balance, and I found this like super relatable and super interesting to me because obviously I'm in grad school and I feel like my work-life balance definitely kind of gets out of hand because I don't know, with grad school you kind of have this like overwhelming sense of guilt for not constantly working on your dissertation, even though it's not like, sometimes you just need a break. So I don't know. I found this to be very relevant to some of the shit that I am struggling with currently. Anyway, back to the book. I definitely bought this romance, and I really liked how Ford respects Ava, and I liked getting to see Ava open up more. There's some like food descriptions throughout the book that were just delicious, like, there's poke and just Mexican food, and I love both of those things, and I just wanted to eat it all. So, yeah, I definitely wanted to keep reading this book. I found it pretty humorous in places, and it was definitely very engaging, and I am very interested to try out more books from this author. Now we move on to the 4.5-star rating, and the only book I'll talk about here is Unravel the Dusk by Elizabeth Lim. So this is the second book in this duology, the Blood of Stars duology, that was started with Spin the Dawn, which was kind of like a pitched as Mulan meets Project Runway. I really loved it. We follow our main character Maya as she returns home from her travels and making these magic dresses. The kingdom is essentially about to go to war. Her love interest is gone, and she is kind of forced into pretending to be the Emperor's bride-to-be. However, rivals learn of this deception, and things essentially go to shit. So we follow Maya as she struggles with this internal conflict. I thought this was very fast-paced. I actually did read it in one sitting. The plot certainly keeps moving throughout, and I didn't feel like there were any dull moments. Elizabeth Lim has really beautiful writing, and it really drew me into the story. I don't feel like it was as much of like a fairy tale-like book as book one, perhaps, but I feel like this is more about Maya trying to not lose herself and also like needing to save her countries. I think it was really heartbreaking watching her struggle with just things that are happening to her. We certainly get some interesting bits throughout the story about demons, which I always like. We didn't get to see as much of her magical abilities with sewing, or the romance, but which like on one hand I kind of missed that because I thought that both of those worked really well in the first book, but on the other hand I feel like it was right to be focused on Maya herself and just like, the conflict that she's going through. I really like Maya as a main character. She's very sweet, and she obviously wants to save her country, which is admirable. We do get to see more of the powers of the dresses, which I thought was a really unique concept. We do have some battles here as well, so these were definitely interesting. So, overall, I feel like I didn't like this quite as much as Spin the Dawn, but I still had a really great time with it, and I would certainly recommend this duology overall. So now we move to the 5-star range, and the first book I'll talk about here is Chaos Reigning by Jessie Mihalik. So this is the third book in this Consortium Rebellion trilogy, which I'm kind of sad that it's over. I've really loved this. It's a sci-fi romance trilogy. We follow Kat this time, who is the youngest sibling of this house, and each book we follow a different sibling. So she kind of acts pretty vapid as a cover to be underestimated. So she's secretly a spy, and she's going undercover at this rival house at the summer retreat to gather intel about some of the treachery that's been going on here. So her sister, Bianca, sends along some guards. One of them poses as Kat's lover, and the other is actually posing as a guard. Kat and this guy, Alexander, who's posing as her lover, must obviously work together when they're attacked to uncover plots and schemes. So this was really great. I have loved all of this series, and this was no exception. We have a lot of strong female characters. I felt Kat was more like Ada from the first book than Bianca from the second book, but she's certainly her own person. I liked how she questions if she's actually competent, and she's questioning who she is, because she's been putting on this persona that she's kind of bubbly and not really too clever. So she's questioning whether or not is that actually an act, or am I in fact this person? So I thought that was made for some interesting internal conflict. In terms of the romance, I thought Kat and Alex definitely had chemistry, but I didn't feel quite as strongly about the romance here as I had in other books. In terms of the plot, we have some fun political schemes here, lots of action, betrayals. We have some interesting plot points in terms of genetic manipulation, and I feel like things kind of came full circle with some of the plot points introduced in book 1. We have some fun technology here. There's, weapons and just spy things disguised as jewelry. It's just super fun. I felt like this was a very nice way to wrap up the trilogy. It's very engaging, and I just absolutely loved this entire series and would definitely recommend it. The next 5-star book I'll talk about is Race the Sands by Sarah Beth Thirst. So this is a standalone adult fantasy, and this is essentially about monster racing. Basically, in this world, you are reborn based on reborn into various forms based on your actions. So the really terrible people are reborn as these monsters, and you're doomed to be that forever unless you win this race. So we follow a trainer and a racer as they team up to win some races because they need money, freedom, etc. So the particular monster that they choose to do this race on, he's kind of strange and is a new monster, so he could have potential if he can be tamed. So this was really fantastic. It's, a 530-page book. I just flew through it and absolutely loved it. This is obviously a really great concept. I liked these monsters. You have all sorts of fun combinations of creatures and just interesting creatures in general. There's a giant spider. I think there was a combo of a rhino and a crocodile. And then obviously this dude is our monster, and he's this metal lion. I found this idea of reincarnation really cool, and we actually get some magic. We have these augurs who can see what people will be reborn as based on their auras, which is super interesting magic. We actually get to see the races, so I thought that was really fun. Definitely, felt like we were there watching these monsters race. I did predict some of the things that happened, but I thought it was super fun to see how everything played out. I really liked our trainer Tamra and racer Raya. And we do have some found family plots going on here, which were really sweet. Tamra is trying to protect her daughter, and Raya, I don't know how to pronounce her name. We'll say it's Raya. Tamra is kind of no nonsense, but she's really badass and strong and certainly very protective. Raya, I certainly felt bad for her. She's trying to escape a really terrible situation with her parents and a really terrible fiance. I liked seeing her bond with this monster and her drive to win the race. We also get to see some of the Emperor-to-be, and he's actually not so bad, and I like seeing his progression a bit. We have corruption, there's political schemes, so this was super interesting, and if you're looking for a really great standalone fantasy, definitely pick this up. Even if you're not looking for a great standalone fantasy, you should pick this up. And the final book I'll talk about today is obviously another 5-star, and that's The Obsidian Tower by Melissa Caruso. So this is the start to a new trilogy, possibly, in the same world as her Swords and Fire trilogy. So I do, but this is like centuries later, I do recommend reading the Swords and Fire trilogy first because it kind of like orients you to this world and you get a sense of like the magic and the background of these different countries. So we follow Rixander, who is part of this Vivomancer family, but she has corrupted magic. So she's the warden to this tower, and basically there's like family lore that's like nothing must unseal the door to the tower. She ends up accidentally killing a foreign dignitary, and the door ends up being unsealed, and there's like this really powerful magical object that's there. So this is really good. I'm not surprised. I love the Swords and Fire trilogy. I was certainly surprised, though, by the direction that this one went. The plot is very fast-paced, super engaging. There's political intrigue, interesting magic in this world, certainly. And just in general, I really enjoyed this world. I obviously need to know what happens next. We have quite a few diverse characters here. Rixander, or Rix, I think, is bi. We have a non-binary character. I think there are several other gay or bi characters, possibly a demisexual character, and this all just felt very natural in the world. Rix was so great. I felt so bad for her. Her magic is essentially like, corrupted, so she kind of can't touch people without killing them, so that's obviously bad. And it seems like a very lonely existence. I liked how she does what's necessary to be, this warden and protect her people, even if it's at the cost of her safety or health. She seems like out of her entire family, the most well-adjusted, certainly. We have a lot of power-hungry people in this country. We have like this interesting character, Whisper, who is, I think, a fox. We have like the Rookery, so that's like a whole bunch of fun characters who investigate magical objects for a living, and I'm really excited to see what happens there. We have a little bit of romance sparking here, and so I'm super excited for that. I feel like the Swords and Fire trilogy had a bit of a slow burn romance, so I'm kind of anticipating something similar here. So this non-binary character, Ardith, seems just like super fun and mischievous, and I definitely want them to be involved more, so I'm very curious to see, if they have a bigger role to play in the next book. But yeah, this was really great. Obviously recommend it, but again, like I said, I think you should read the Swords and Fire trilogy first, just to kind of enjoy all of it. It's just so fabulous. So those are books 21 through 30 that I read in July. Lots of great books here, obviously, so that's, what I want to see. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books or think you might pick them up. And for your question of the day, do you enjoy things like monster racing and monster hunting? Things like that. So I guess with that, I hope you're having an excellent day and are reading something awesome. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a big thumbs up, as that would certainly help me out. But with that, I think I'm going to wrap it up here and see you in the next one.